Hi everyone, it's Salia and welcome back to HustleSZN. Today I have a video about the latest book that I've read, which is The Astonishing Color of After by Emily X.R. Pan. I actually left the dust jacket in Kingston, so you're just gonna have to appreciate the spine of this book. As always, maybe the first 30 seconds will be non-spoilery, but I don't generally like non-spoilery reviews, so there will be spoilers. This book is about an American girl whose mom is Taiwanese, and she's grown up in America and her mom commits suicide. Her mom comes to her as a bird and she thinks that by going to Taiwan she'll learn about some of her mom's past. Overall, I really liked this book. The storyline is your typical contemporary. This just takes it up a notch by having quite a bit of diversity, different sexualities, mental health portrayed accurately. So if you were looking for a contemporary with just like a hint of something more substantial, I would definitely pick this up. The only weird thing was that I read most of it this week, and the tone of this book is not a light one. It's definitely about grieving. Obviously the mom just committed suicide. It's not heavy, but it's not your light, fluffy contemporary either. If I was more of a mood reader, I probably would have stopped reading it just because I've actually had an incredible week to the point where like I've had so much excitement energy. Like I almost look like I'm always anxious because I just have so much energy. A lot of things just have gone really well at work lately. So I actually was having one of the best weeks of my life, and then I'm at the same time reading this book about grieving, and while I could relate to it just because of my own personal experiences, it was very weird to read this book and like mentally understand what she's going through, but it was so different from what I was feeling as I was reading it. So sometimes I think if I just read this during one of those bad weeks where I was a bit more upset, it probably would have hit home so much more. I probably would have like bawled my eyes out multiple times, and I probably would have connected with it a lot more. Despite that, even in my very happy mood, I still really liked the book. The author actually did a really good job of showing that grief come through, and if you read the acknowledgements in the back, she obviously did go through this experience. It wasn't like she was making it up, so we'd expect anyways that she'd do a good job. So Lee's the main character. Every time she goes somewhere or learns something new about her mom, you always see her coming back to this question of, could I have prevented it, or what could I have done differently? That constant fixation and always coming back to it was something I really related to. Even when like there's really nothing you did, you just still always will sit and ponder. There's always so many what ifs that are gonna come out, and she did a really good job of showing that. I didn't expect the book to be as pretty as it was, and by that I mean like just the style and the writing. The chapters in and of themselves I was obsessed with because they are so short. Some of them literally would just be like a page long. Sometimes they were as if you were reading prose poetry. Like it wasn't even like you were reading a book. And the whole synesthesia aspect of it, all the colors that were put into the book, it also gave it a very artsy vibe and a very like indie film book vibe. So like you could really imagine so many scenes of this book being in your indie coming of age film. So for that reason, I think reading this book, it's just this like wonderful aesthetic in your head. I loved the style. I really liked the way Lee described things with color. On the topic of other things that I really liked about this book, I personally really like when you have dysfunctional families in books and in movies. My family just is so not the perfect family. We will never all be together in the same room without an argument happening. I'm kind of at the point now where I accepted my family through and through, and I don't necessarily need that validation, but it's still very nice to see it normalized. That being said, I could not stand Lee's dad at all. I really did not like him. There were so many things that he did that I was like, how are you even a parent right now? There were two things, like right off the bat when they go to Taiwan and for some reason he just gets up and leaves her. Who does that? What dad just abandons their child in a foreign country where she doesn't speak their first language? I was so dumbfounded. After that, I don't know that he ever really redeemed himself. Like, I know you're grieving because your wife just committed suicide. I get it, and I know we find out that there's history later, but come on. I've been kicked out of a house. I went to go visit my aunt once in Europe and I got kicked out of the house, and it was in Norway. I was able to manage somehow, and I was lucky that people did speak English, but just knowing how that feels, as a dad, you don't do that. So I found it very hard to then try to forgive him for that. Obviously, like, she only has one parent left, and I was happy in the end that she made up with him, but I don't know why he didn't return sooner. Like, it took him so long to be like, you know what, maybe I shouldn't have abandoned my child. So it was that. And then later through the memories, you also realize that he paid for the camp to send her away. Again, I was like, what are you thinking? You're a good character and like you have these qualities that I like, but you're literally failing at parenting every single time. Not to mention, I don't think it was meant this way, but you know, it's debatable, I think, whether or not he kind of had yellow fever at the beginning of the book, or not the beginning, but like when he first met Dory, Lee's mom, because he studies like Chinese history, culture, and the language, and then also starts dating a Taiwanese individual. You know what I mean? Like, did he date Dory because he liked her, or did he date Dory because he was obsessed with Asian culture? I think it's hard to say. I personally did not like him. Like, I didn't hate him either. I totally understood that at the end of the day, Lee has to like him and that he's all she really has left. And so like, I wasn't mad at the ending and them getting back together. I want it to work out. I didn't even feel like at the end of the book, he's that much more mature. I don't know. Obviously he's grieving and he's having his own issues, so I can't be too mad at him. All the Emily Dickinson poetry that was like spread throughout this, I really enjoyed. I only know the one poem about her sitting in the carriage with immortality, and I like that one. So as I was saying, it's like an indie film but in a book, and there were a lot of scenes where you could feel that. There were a couple. There's one where Axel, which is her boyfriend-ish, I don't know what he creates, but somehow he plays music and there's a video and like there's all these lights floating across the room, and that to me, I was like, oh my god, this is like straight out of like a Perks of Being a Wallflower type film. And there was another scene that was, I felt like was a very intense movie scene where Lee's trying to explain to her grandmother that her mom has transformed into a bird and she can't speak Taiwanese or Mandarin, so she just tries to draw the pictures and she's drawing and she's trying and she's trying, and my grandma's just like very confused, and then finally she has this moment of revelation where she draws a caterpillar turning into a butterfly and then her mom turning into a bird, and it just like dawns on the grandmother what Lee is trying to say. That one, I was reading it and I was just imagining these like intense music going on in the background as like we come closer and closer to the discovery. This book in general, I think its biggest strength was just that it really creates an atmosphere, an environment, and an aesthetic for you to imagine. Another character that I really liked was just the grandmother. There's this one chapter where we get a bit of her backstory, and I was at work and I had a little break and I read this chapter and it hit me. It was one of those moments where like you really get perspective and you're like, oh my god, I am so fortunate to have the life that I have. Basically, she was sold off to another family for being a girl and to marry the son of that family. You find out later like it does work out a bit more in her favor. It's not as bad as it sounds, but just I was reading this and I was like, it's so similar to like what my grandma went through, and you're just like, damn, it's so crazy that as a girl or just as a person even, that you have like so much opportunity, that I get to go to school, that I get to be working, that I wasn't in some arranged marriage somewhere. Like, I talked about how I was just in a very, very happy place when I was reading this book, so sometimes it was like my brainwaves were not resonating with what Lee was saying and the tone of her brainwaves, but she did eventually break me. There were two parts that like really got to me. The first one was when her and her dad finally have their first long conversation in a really long time. That one I just teared up at. I still got emotional for that one, just like I was so excited for her to finally start building that bridge. And maybe the fact that like I haven't had a conversation with my dad in so long, I just really felt for her when she was able to actually move past that. And then the second part was when she comes home from Taiwan and Axel's there and they meet, and she like starts getting really overwhelmed and like doesn't want to talk about her emotions and how much she's suffered, because despite the fact that she's like grieving throughout the whole book, but you never really see her break down and start crying. She has a goal, and so because she has this goal, she still has hope, and she's still in that phase where like, it hasn't fully hit that her mom is dead. She's still like actively doing something, and there's this bird and like she can communicate with her. Not all hope is lost, but when she comes home and kind of like accepts that the 49 days are over, which also, if anyone has watched that K-drama 49 Days, I immediately thought of that. I haven't watched it, but all my good friends have watched it, and as soon as that was mentioned, I was like, oh my god, it must be a similar thing where you have 49 days before the ghost can move on. But yeah, so she comes home and she's kind of officially accepted that she's gonna start moving on with her life. life, all the magic stuff has now gone away. She doesn't want to open up, and you just like see her struggling. And what got to me was that Axel wanted to help her and he was there for her. And this will sound like I'm complaining. It's not that. It's that I never had someone, like when my dad had his stroke and like I went through all the grieving, I didn't have anybody there with me. I think part of me always did want someone there to support me. Like you have friends and you have your family, but your family's all going through their own shit, and your friends, they want to help, but like they are not going through it. It's different than just having a significant other who's with you all the time through it. There was just something about it. It was like part of me, without even realizing it, had always wanted that in the 2 years that I struggled with it, and she got it within 2 months. I don't know what it was, but I literally started like bawling. I was so happy for her, but also to see that want that I had but didn't even know I had, like written on paper, and seeing the scene, oh my god, it got to me. And it's literally, it's not even a page long. They say like 3 sentences to each other and then it's over and they start making out. But for me, something about those 3 sentences like hit me so hard. The other aspect of this book is just the element of magic. I guess this falls under magical realism. The magic doesn't make sense, but that was okay. It's one of those situations where you're just okay accepting that there is weird magical stuff happening. It doesn't fully make sense, and you don't even fully know if it's magic or if it's some way that Lee is seeing the world differently, because it seems to only really affect her, but then there's bits and pieces of it that affect other people. Children are the ones who are able to see ghosts the best, so maybe that's why the only other people you see that it kind of affects is that one girl at the festival that they go to, and then Axel. I didn't think too hard about it, and I didn't think you really needed to. It serves its purpose. It makes the book more fantastical, and it just adds to its aesthetic. So let me know down below if you've read this book or if you enjoyed it or what you thought about it. I'm happy to hear and discuss any opinions.